Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap up where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So you haven't seen me in a little bit because I had an epic nonfiction November fail. I failed so badly that I threw myself into a reading slump and was a little depressed and am still a little blue. So what happened was that, as you may know, I like to read on themes. I like to have thematic reading, especially for nonfiction. I like to learn something. I like to feel a little bit more well-rounded on a topic. Leveraging Nonfiction November as a great opportunity. And I thought I would be really gratified and happy and excited to study places. So Paris specifically and places in Italy. So I had all of these books focused on those themes. And instead of making me happy, it made me really depressed. Really, really, really depressed. The wanderlust that I feel kind of exploded. And I think it's because I tend to use literature as a means of prepping for a trip and getting really excited about a trip and knowing that there's no trip yet that I can take or schedule because of the fluctuations with the pandemic right now. I just kind of feel at a loss. So yeah, I had to kind of scrap everything. And then I realized that a lot of my books that I have are set in places that I love, are set in places that I admire, that I want to know more about. So even if it's not nonfiction, a lot of the fiction is set in those places. So I had to kind of regroup, reset, and just kind of throw all expectations out the window and really just find some comfort. So let's talk about what I did read, because once I did change my plans, I read some good stuff and stuff that I just wouldn't have picked up in it for a while, I think, were it not for the situation. So the first thing I want to talk about is a book that I had mentioned before in my last video. I finished this, and this is A Ghost in the Throat, and this is by Doireann and Ghríofa. Now, she is an Irish writer, translator, poet, and this is a memoir, autofiction, where she's really talking about a time in her life when she had very young children. She was pregnant with her most recent baby, and kind of leading into the pregnancy, and then the year that she's kind of taking care of this baby. And during this time, they have moved into a place that harkens back and reminds her of a woman and a poem that she used to love. And the woman who wrote it is really not very well known. And so she starts to, as a passion project, as something to keep her mind active during this time where she's really just rinse repeating, taking care of these babies and these kids. She wants to understand, she wants to learn. She becomes very fixated and intellectually stimulated with this woman's story. I found this book, I did the audio, and I think this is one of those examples where I think in order to pull out all the richness of a book like this, you need to do both. You can't just settle on one. You can't just read the book, because I think you miss out on the accents, unless you're Irish or familiar with the Irish brogue and Irish dialect. I think you gain so much by listening to it, and also the poetry, as she's talking about the verses and the poem and all of that. But I also think that some of the nuance, some of the subtlety, some of the details, which there are many, this is very intricate. It's like, I don't know, it's like fine wood lace work, where she's pulling together all of these things, and she's kind of meticulous, and really she goes very deep into some of these situations and some of these instances that happen in her life, really deep into them. And I think it's those moments that provide like so much richness and vibrancy and life. She kind of pumps life in through those moments. She talks about woman's work. She talks about motherhood. She talks about grief, language, place, history. This takes you, it's so interesting because she doesn't leave this space that she's in, but you just feel so expansive, or at least I felt so expansive when I listened to it. But I will admit that I don't think I caught everything. There were a lot of things that I think I missed that I would glean from reading the actual text itself. Still thought it was tremendous and look forward to one day jumping into the actual book itself and reading it. Great start on that one. Finishing that out was wonderful. And then is when the slump hit, and it hit hard. And I think it was because I was reading Julien Green's Paris, which I spoke about last time, which are these essays about his love for Paris. And I was reading that along with Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Prime of Life. This is her second in her autobiographical series. And I think it just made me so can you be homesick for a place that you've never lived? Made me so sad. It made me so want to go there that I had to just completely grab something else. And so I just got up and wandered around with all the books and tried to figure out like what's sparking my interest. And I grabbed this, which is not necessarily joyous, but was very different, and it helped me kind of pop out of that temporary reading slump. This is I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya. This is an essay. It's a very slim little book, but it's very powerful. It's basically a personal memoir of Vivek coming out as a trans woman, and all of the homophobia, transphobia, danger, racism, all of those things that she experiences being embodied as a trans woman, and how it feels, and all the ways that she has to think about how she exists in the world in spaces for her protection because she's afraid, and what that violence has felt like to experience and to come across and to be the victim of or be threatened with. I thought this was incredibly powerful, but not, it was realistic, not depressing. There's still a fight in here, and there's a demand to be seen as a human being, and a call for humanity to be better. Because it's not just men; she's also afraid of women, and it's because of how deep transphobia is rooted in our society. I thought this was remarkable, and it makes me want to read more of Vivek's work. I think the subtweet is something that I had on a list that I was looking at. So if you've read any more of Vivek Shraya's work, please let me know what I should pick up next. But so that was a nice reprieve. It kind of got me out of, kind of really yanked me out of this funk and set me in a different mind space. So then I was like, oh wait, this was such a great book. I knew that Black Friday was coming up, and so I was starting to compile a list at Blackwell's in the UK. Because there are books that I want to read that are only right now out in the UK that are not out here. And I'm greedy. I want those UK covers, which are usually better than the American covers. And I don't want to wait on some of these things. And sometimes we don't get some of the books. They just flat out are not published here. I found this next book. I think it was Simon Savage that talked about this one. This is This Green and Pleasant Land, and it's by Ayisha Malik. I did the audio of this because it was what was available. And it's, you know, it's a comedy of manners, gentle, modern look at village life. And it's village life that is threatened when a man named Bilal, his mother is on her deathbed, and she asks him to make her a deathbed promise that he will build a mosque in their sleepy little village in the UK. And his wife is Miriam, and she is a journalist. And she's kind of half in this marriage, half out this marriage. She has a son from her previous husband. And, you know, Bilal is a really boring character. He doesn't have a lot of get up and go. And he kind of like is very passive and just kind of lets things happen. Well, she's shocked that he agrees to this because she knows exactly what's going to happen, which is that it's just going to set the entire village aflame. And sure enough, there's also a character that is his aunt, and she's a little poorly, and the rest of the family asked for a reprieve and just said, can you take her for a little while to give us a little break? And so he agrees to this, thereby bringing in his elderly aunt into the house and with his stepson and his wife. And she doesn't know a lot of English, but she kind of serves as this gentle, kind, naive connector. So she goes for walks, and she ends up meeting and walking with one of the most antagonistic women, who is absolutely against having a mosque in their village. But the woman is charmed by her. And some of it is the fact that she doesn't speak very good English, so she can just say whatever she wants to say. And this woman doesn't really know, but just acts like it's a very kind and lovely exchange. So, you know, the challenge with this book is there's not a lot of depth here. There's no nuance, subtlety, or anything like that. And it deals with fairly scary and horrific themes in a very gentle, soft, cozy, polite way. You know, Islamophobia, racism, all of that. You know, it's what you look for in a village story about community and belonging, and it kind of wraps itself up with a nice bow. So, you know, it's one of those feel good. But it's relevant, it's timely, all of that good stuff. So I did enjoy it. It did help me out of my funk because I just needed comfort. And this was a very nice comfort read for sure. Speaking of comfort reads, I also had been hearing about this book for so many years. And finally I said, okay, now's the time. This is Meet Me at the Library by Youngson. And the reason I've wanted to read this is because everyone compares it to my favorite book, 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. Now, 84 Charing Cross Road is an epistolary nonfiction book that talks about it lets us in on the conversations between a woman in New York who's trying to buy antiquarian books from a bookshop in London right after the war, and the correspondence that goes through the years. So I think that's the main thrust of the connection. 84 Charing Cross Road is charming. This is deeper. This is more philosophical. This is more modern. There's more here. And it's not just the quaint niceties. This book starts with Tina, who is, she's writing, it almost feels like she's writing a letter that she doesn't expect to ever see the light of day. And she's writing it to a museum in Denmark. And the museum has a specific exhibit, the Tolman Man. And the Tolman Man is a figure that was found in a bog, and so very well preserved. And she and her best friend always were fascinated with the Tolman Man, and she wanted to see him. And she's regretting the fact that she hasn't done it yet. And so it's a very strange letter because you're not really sure what to say, how to respond. But Anders, who is a professor of antiquities at the museum, actually does respond to her letter. And he does so with a lot of kindness and compassion and just kind of open mindedness. And they start a communication back and forth. Now, Tina is in her 60s. She's married. Her husband's a farmer, and she helps out on the farm, and she has adult children. Anders is widowed, and he has adult children as well. And you can tell that they're both very lonely in their lives. They develop a lovely friendship that speaks about grief and about the time that people have left and alternative ways that life could be lived. Kind of philosophical, really deep conversations. I was surprised at some of the places that she went to with this book in terms of material. It's very, very readable. I did get bogged down a little bit in the middle, kind of the middle section. And I also felt like it took me to places that provoked me, where I wasn't very comfortable. And at first I was, I didn't like that. But in retrospect, it is quite something to be provoked by a book and to recognize where your boundaries are with something and that you maybe hadn't considered before. And that's what happened with this one. So I think it was a very good book. It made me think. It gave me cozy vibes, but more intellectual rigor as well, and a little more depth. So this also helped me in my slump. So thank you very much for that, Ms. Youngson. Then I saw Mel from Melanie Martin. She also used to have Mel's Bookland Adventure. She is one of the hosts for the wonderful, wonderful Cloak and Dagger Christmas. And so this is a mystery reading extravaganza that happens every December, and I love it deeply. And when I saw that she started hers just in November, I was like, well, why am I waiting? And I always do find that it is one of the things that helps me break slumps is when I switch to genre, specifically a good mystery is something that usually does help me kind of get out of, shake off a bad book or prevent a slump. So I had this book in my Neck Galley. And this is 1979. It's the new series by Val McDermid, #1 of the Allie Burns book series. And this is just fantastic. For a brand new series, it just my eyes flew off the page. It was so sharp and so quick and well-paced. Let me back up and say that when I start a new series, I expect an info dump. I expect a lot of context setting. Who is this person? Who are all the people that we're going to meet and kind of follow the series with, And so I kind of go in expecting certain things that I know are going to slow me down and I'm not going to enjoy that much, but it's kind of the price of starting a new series. With this one though, I was amazed. The characters kind of unfolded naturally, and we kind of meet Allie as this young woman. She just came from Cambridge where she got her degree, and this is like her first big job at a newspaper. She wants to be an investigative journalist. She wants to do serious journalism, but she keeps getting relegated to women's stories. And it's really bumming her out. There's a lot of old boys network and a lot of sexism. I mean, it's 1979 in the workplace, and she's struggling. She's on her way home, and she's on the train, and she looks over and she sees that one of her coworkers, Danny Sullivan, who is also a fairly younger guy, he's also one of the newer journalists. He's sitting on that same train in the same car with her. Well, someone comes running in and says, we need a doctor, there's an emergency. So they both rush to see what's going on, as any journalist would, right? And there's a woman, and she's giving birth right there and nobody really knows what to do. Danny rolls up his sleeve and helps deliver this baby. Allie keeps the woman focused, And they have this kind of natural chemistry together, her and Danny, in kind of taking care of this situation. And then it's obvious it's a story, and it's obvious that she should write the story because it's a woman's story, even though it was Danny that gave birth to the baby. But he doesn't want to touch that story at all. But it was through that experience that he sees her for how smart she is and how good she is at her craft of narrative. So he pins her and says, hey, I've got an idea. Will you help me with this? And it's unusual in the workspace because it's so competitive. It's more likely that people are going to steal a story for you or going to steal your byline than they are really going to work with you and partner with you. And they proceed, though, to work on some really scary, very interesting stories that have real life implications that they have to deal with. This was so good. If you are looking for a new murder mystery series, I haven't started the next one. I will be looking for it. But 1979 by Val McDermid was, A+, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was fun. Then I had something else on my Neck Galley that I wanted to get to. And you all know how much I am obsessed with the Mitford family, that wacky family of English aristocrats that were involved all across the political spectrum. And Nancy Mitford is the writer who wrote In Pursuit of Love that just this summer had appeared on, they did an adaptation on Amazon Prime for The Pursuit of Love. And The Pursuit of Love is very much an amalgamation of characters of her own family, kind of composited and mixed and matched. But you get a sense of how absolutely wacky and insane this family is. Well, there's a new book out very soon, and it is The Mayfair Bookshop. And this is by Eliza Knight. I'm previewing it with you now, but it's not out until March of next year. But if you are a Mitford fan, this was fun. This was good fun. We've got two timelines. We've got a modern day timeline with this woman named Lucy. She works in the United States, but she's kind of a curator trying to curate libraries for famous people, rich people, people with a lot of money that want to set up their own private libraries. So she is on loan from library she works to Haywood Hills, which is the very famous bookstore in Mayfair, hence the name, that Nancy Mitford worked at. And it's a charming bookstore. I've been there. It's just so lovely. And I don't know. I just got very excited knowing that Nancy had worked there and all the people that had been in through the store. And you got that same excitement and that same adoration and glow from Lucy as she's talking about being there, and now she's working there and she's kind of staying there as well as she's trying to build this collection. She's also there kind of surreptitiously trying to solve a personal riddle and a personal puzzle that she and her mother always wondered about. And her mother had purchased a book, and the book had this very, very personal inscription in it from Nancy to a woman named Iris. And her mother and her always wondered who was this Iris woman, because Nancy Mitford lived out loud. She was tabloid fodder. The entire Mitfords were tabloid fodder during their age, as part of the Bright Young Things, and also with all of the drama with her sister marrying a fascist, her other sister being a Hitler fan, moving to Germany, befriending Hitler, and another sister becoming a communist and moving to the United States. So there's all of these family members that were doing outrageous things that got them in the press. The time that Eliza Knight chose to highlight Nancy's life is really, I think, probably the most interesting span of time that she could have chosen. And it's where Nancy is starting to become a writer. She is engaged to be married, and she starts her marriage that turns out to be not very successful. Her sisters start going off the rails, and then war breaks out. and she tries to help out. She tries to figure out what her contribution will be, and also deals with the ramifications of having two absolutely not just lunatic sisters, but actually really dangerous family members who were plotting against England and were treasonous in their allegiance and alliances with Hitler. It just really interesting time frame, and I think Eliza Knight did a phenomenal job at humanizing Nancy and picking out her tone, picking out her vocabulary, in fleshing out some of the challenges that she probably was having in those times and moments. And there's a lot of material about the Mitford family. There's the letters, which were one of my favorite books of last year. It's a chunkster of a book, but it's the letters between all of the sisters. And, so having read a lot of Nancy's own voice in communicating with her family, it definitely felt and rang a little true. Now, I think there's obviously some imagination here to kind of put the ideas and the thoughts and the feelings about these situations into her mind. But I, being somebody who really likes Nancy and Jessica, I just really thought that it was well done. A lot of, you could call it fan service. It was done here, and I think done very well. So I was incredibly impressed. I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but I really, really did. So that's what I read. I mentioned I'm going to be dumping the nonfiction November stuff. I'll come back to it, but I just can't right now. But I am continuing with Proust. This is In Search of Lost Time, Volume 4, Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is, he's so outrageous in this one. There were times, it takes a lot to shock me. I gasped out loud at a couple of scenes that Marcel put together. I mean, this is definitely, it's so gay. It's so gay. He talks a lot about inversion, and that's what they, the phraseology about homosexuality was. So, it feels so strange, and we just don't use those types of words or anything. But, he's writing about the Belle Epoque, and so we can't expect to have the same type of language. Although he does, it's so many interesting things that he pulls out about gay culture, and he really loves just sticking to this one character and just kind of getting under his skin and just showing him for the buffoon that he is. It's really good fun. It feels like it's worth it to put up with the whiny emo years to get to these years. So I'm enjoying it. Then I also decided to start another mystery. And this is a series that I've wanted to jump back into. This is the Matthew Shardlake series, and this is Dark Fire by C.J. Sansom. This is set during Cromwell's era in England, and we have Matthew Shardlake, who is a hunchback lawyer, and he's just incredibly smart, but he keeps getting pulled into working for. He came on Cromwell's radar, and Cromwell keeps pulling him back into working for him, which is very hard for him to say no to because Cromwell is kind of all powerful. But in this one, Cromwell's power is starting to wane, and it's starting to fray, and he's impacted potentially by that because of some of the work that he's doing for Cromwell. And the writing's fantastic. I love a good historical mystery. So this is right up my alley. And then I have all sorts of mysteries kind of teed up, ready to go for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. But other than that, I am going to just follow my whims because, life's hard right now, and I just need all the emotional support I can get in book form. So that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know if you read any of these books. What are your thoughts? And thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.